The story begins with a couple, January, whom we will call Jan, and her boyfriend, Callum. They were on a trip in Brazil, enjoying a scooter ride and the beautiful scenery around them. Both of them were happy, and Callum increased the speed of the scooter. Soon they entered a tunnel, and 2 cars came toward them, causing a serious accident. Callum was not badly hurt, but Jan's condition became critical. She received deep injuries, especially on her head. The doctors treated her, but her basic recovery took many months. The worst part was that the head injury caused Jan to lose her memory. She could not remember anything about her life before the accident. However, she still felt something for Callum in her heart, as if he wasn't a stranger. Those months were extremely difficult for both of them, because Callum didn't have a job. Even then, he stayed with Jan and supported her because they truly cared for each other. After being discharged from the hospital, Callum decides to take Jan to her family. Their home, which was actually a large mansion, was in the countryside of England and far away from everything. Callum had no idea that Jan's family was so rich, so he was surprised when he saw the mansion, and even more shocked to learn they had a butler. Callum came from a poor background, and Jan had never told him much about her past. But the truth was that her past was hiding some deep secrets, which soon become connected to the story. Before Callum and Jan arrive, we get a short glimpse of her family. From the very beginning, it feels like they are hiding something. The mansion doesn't look as grand as it must have been before. It almost feels worn out, as if something happened to them. 5 people live in the mansion: the father, Albert, an elderly man, his wife Marilyn, their 2 children, Catherine and Lawrence, and finally their butler, Thomas. All of them welcome Jan, but none of them knew she was in a wheelchair. The accident had affected her so much that it would take a long time for her to fully recover. What felt strange was that Jan didn't feel anything emotionally. She didn't recognize her home or her family. Her mother came close, hugged her, and kissed her forehead, saying she had missed her dearly. But Jan felt nothing because her amnesia had erased her memories. Even though she didn't feel connected to the house or the people in it, she still hoped that slowly everything would come back to her. The family clearly feels uneasy about Jan, and we sense that same tension. At dinner, Lawrence questions her without concern, while Albert blames Callum for the accident and treats him rudely. Their harshness comes from the fact that Jan ran away from home years ago. She doesn't remember why, and she never told Callum either, but the family still holds bitterness. After dinner, Callum takes Jan to her room. Downstairs, Albert scolds Lawrence for asking her too much. Jan tells Callum she doesn't feel any connection with her family, not even with her mother. Callum reassures her that things will get better. Then Thomas, the butler, tells Callum he must sleep in a separate room because only married couples can stay together. This makes it clear how old-fashioned the family is. Callum has no choice but to follow the rule. But things get even stranger when Thomas takes him to a small, dirty room downstairs with only a mattress. Callum finds it very odd, and Thomas gives no explanation. It's obvious from this that Jan's family doesn't like him. That night, Jan plays the piano and sees confusing visions. The next morning, Albert approaches Callum with a gun, but only to take him hunting. On the way, he explains the house is far from town, so they keep weapons. Albert then asks how much money Callum wants to leave Jan and return to London. Callum refuses, even when Albert reminds him he has no job, no home, and no future. At home, Catherine helps Jan shower and do her makeup. Jan asks why she never married or dated, and Catherine says she chose this life, adding that she can't run away from her family, a clear jab at Jan. She seems upset or jealous. While washing clothes, Catherine finds a shirt with offensive words and refuses to clean it. At lunch, Albert and Callum return from hunting. The noise overwhelms Jan, and she snaps and uses a harsh word. Lawrence tells her to apologize to her mother, but she doesn't. Later, Jan sees a family painting where she stands apart from everyone. Her mother says Catherine painted it from an old photo because Jan had run away and she missed her. This makes Jan even more eager to know why she left home. Callum is looking through some papers when Lawrence appears and behaves rudely again. When Callum asks why Jan ran away, Lawrence says she was a free-spirited, hot-tempered girl who left because of her wild nature. Later, Jan and Callum argue, and Jan angrily blames him for the accident, even though he also suffered and cared for her. Hurt, Callum walks out. That night, Jan dreams about fragments of her past, but nothing is clear. In the morning, she can't find Callum. She goes downstairs, and the family tells her he has left. Jan doesn't believe it, but her father insists he was worthless and says he's tired of her acting like an outsider. He mentions the shirt with the rude word, showing his old-fashioned mindset. He tells Jan she must dress properly and follow the family's rules now. Jan is forced to stay silent and live their way. She wears plain clothes and tries to adjust. Time passes, but Callum never returns or contacts her. Jan hopes for her memory to return or to feel connected, but nothing changes. She still feels like a stranger, completely apart from her own family. Jan had recovered enough to walk a little on her own. Catherine told her that everyone in the house must help with some work, so Jan should also assist. Jan agreed because it would please her mother. That night in the kitchen, Lawrence came to her, spoke strangely, and touched her in an inappropriate way, showing he had bad intentions. Earlier, Jan had also seen him hit Thomas for no reason, proving there were dark secrets in this family. Later, Jan's mother asked her about the outside world, what she had seen and the people she met, but Jan said she remembered nothing. Her mother was the only person in the house who truly cared for her. Jan slowly got better and didn't need the wheelchair much, except when using the stairs. When Thomas helped her upstairs, Jan asked him to take her to the nearby village so she could call Callum. Thomas refused, saying he couldn't do anything without her father's permission. Jan felt disappointed. In the art room, Jan looked at Catherine's paintings and realized the truth. The family portrait downstairs was made by combining two different photos. In the real picture, Jan was not with them at all. This confirmed her suspicion. They were not her real family. Terrified, Jan refused to leave the room. The family tried to calm her, but Jan now knew she wasn't safe here and that they were hiding something very dark. The family tries to pull Jan out, but she refuses and even attempts to escape through a window, which is locked. Albert grows tense and frustrated. Pushed to her limit, Jan breaks a piece of glass and prepares to end her life. Before she can, Thomas slips a newspaper clipping under the door. Jan reads it and discovers the truth. Her real mother died by her own actions when Jan was a child, and Jan had witnessed it. The next day, Marilyn brought food and waited calmly for Jan to come out, but Jan took the food inside and threw it away. Later, Marilyn entered the room and found Jan lying on the bed, holding medicine, appearing lifeless, as if she had ended her life. But it was only a trick. Jan suddenly held the broken glass to Marilyn's neck and warned everyone that if they followed her, she would harm Marilyn. Terrified, Albert handed her the keys. They tried to calm her, but Jan didn't trust anyone. She only wanted to escape. Unfortunately, she was still weak and couldn't get far. Soon, she reached a spot where she found Callum's burnt clothes and a shallow grave nearby. This made it clear the family had already killed Callum, and in this remote place, no one would ever find him. Realizing this, Jan was overwhelmed with fear. Lawrence reaches her first and shoots a dart that knocks Jan out. When she wakes, she confronts the family, saying they aren't her real relatives and that her mother took her own life. Albert denies it, so Jan shows the newspaper clipping and demands answers. Albert gets angry at Thomas, but Jan explains Thomas never told her anything. Albert finally admits he isn't her real father and blames her biological father for the past. He also says John will become part of their family no matter what, without explaining his plan. They drag her to the basement, inject her with drugs, and she loses consciousness. When Jan wakes up in the basement, the whole family is standing around her. Lawrence and Catherine are holding her down, and Albert forces her into a situation meant to make her produce a child, which is how he planned to trap her permanently in their family. Thomas and Marilyn can't bear to watch and walk away, but they still don't help her. When Jan becomes fully conscious afterward, she breaks down. She has lost Callum, and now she has suffered something horrific. It becomes clear this entire family is deeply disturbed, because all of them allowed it to happen. Jan is kept locked in the basement, treated like an animal, while Albert repeatedly forces himself on her until she becomes pregnant. Only Marilyn and Thomas show any sympathy. Everyone else treats her cruelly, and the situation becomes deeply disturbing. Jan stays in constant shock as months pass and Albert's child grows inside her. Still recovering from her accident and memory loss, she survives in the filthy basement for months. One day, Lawrence tells her she can have her old room back if she accepts the family. Jan realizes resisting only brings more pain, so she tells Albert she won't go against him if she's allowed to stay in her room. He agrees. When Catherine helps dress her, she claims Jan has always been their favorite, though Jan was never there. Her jealousy shows clearly. Catherine's mindset is twisted. She wanted the attention Albert gave Jan, wishing for an inappropriate closeness with him. But Albert never saw her that way. His real motive for what he did to Jan will be revealed later. In anger, Catherine pulls out Jan's eyelashes. When Albert learns this, he punishes Catherine, and the family's madness grows even more. Thomas is the only one who can't bear seeing Jan suffer. One day, he secretly tells her the truth. Albert and his family were once servants of Jan's real father. After her father died, they took over his property, and now they are taking revenge on Jan and on Thomas for something her father did. Jan asks what her father did, but before Thomas can answer, Albert calls him away. Jan continues pretending to behave and slowly gains their trust. One night, Albert doesn't lock the door behind her, believing she has accepted the family. Jan uses this chance to escape. She reaches the car and gets an idea. She spreads petrol around the house to burn them alive, but before she can light it, Albert catches her. Even though she is pregnant, he beats her brutally and drags her back to the basement. Watching this, Thomas finally reaches his breaking point. Later, Marilyn sends Catherine to give Jan milk. When Catherine enters, she finds Jan threatening to harm her unborn child. Jan says she refuses to let her baby grow up in this family and that she doesn't care if they kill her. Catherine is shaken, though in reality she never cared about the baby. She was simply trapped by her family. Jan tries to provoke Catherine into shooting her, but Catherine doesn't do it. As she turns to leave, Thomas suddenly attacks her, leading to her death, and then frees Jan. Thomas finally reveals the full truth. When Callum called for help after the accident, the family killed Jan's real father. Albert had been waiting for this moment for years to take revenge. Jan asks why her father deserved such hatred, and Thomas explains. Jan's real father, Lord Dunfield, had mistreated Marilyn when she was a servant, which caused her pregnancy, and Jan was the child. Lady Dunfield accepted the truth quietly and raised Jan as her own. But one day, the guilt became too much, and she ended her life. After learning this truth in the past, Jan had run away from home. Thomas tells Jan she must escape because Albert wants revenge on her for her father's actions. Albert, Thomas, Marilyn, Catherine, and Lawrence had all once worked under Jan's father, but now even Thomas is trapped under Albert's control. This means Marilyn is Jan's biological mother, and Catherine and Lawrence are Jan's half-siblings. Albert has no blood relation to Jan. Marilyn never protected Jan because she was powerless and forced to stay silent. After learning everything, Jan takes Thomas's gun and goes back into the house, telling him to leave. Thomas, terrified and crying, walks away. One thing that doesn't make sense is how the story seems to exist in a world with no law or police at all. Lord Dunfield was a wealthy man, so he must have had friends or relatives who would visit him. Anyone could have discovered the truth. Otherwise, it feels unrealistic that all the servants could simply kill their master, take over his identity, and no one would ever question it. But the film seems to ignore this logic and focuses only on the theme of revenge, not on how the outside world would react. Returning to the story, Jan is now burning with revenge and doesn't care if she dies. Catherine is already dead by Thomas's hand. Jan personally kills Albert and Lawrence, and it seems the family always knew this was their inevitable end. In the final moments, Jan approaches her biological mother, Marilyn, holding a gun. But she doesn't shoot her. Instead, Jan apologizes, places the gun beside Marilyn, and walks away. Her gesture is clear. She expects Marilyn to end her own life, and Marilyn does exactly that. Outside, Jan collapses from exhaustion as if carrying the weight of everything she has endured. She sits quietly near the house, and the film ends with her in that silent, broken state. And this is where the film finally ends.